Hello everybody, it is June 7th, 2025 here in the United States of America, and today's video I want to talk about the fallout between Elon Musk and President Donald J. Trump and what I think Elon Musk should have done and how he should have handled the situation given his position of influence and the desire for Elon to have a continued position of influence in American politics. First of all, say hi, Leela. Say hi, Leela. Say hello, Leela. Oh, you look so happy. Okay, let's get down. So, I'm sure everyone out there is aware of the recent spat, so to speak, between Elon Musk and President Donald Trump. Apparently Elon wasn't thrilled with Donald Trump's, quote, big, beautiful bill, as are several prominent Republican senators. Now, Elon was fairly vocal about it for a few days. He didn't support the bill. He thought it was a bad idea. It would only increase the debt, and the negative things in the bill, like the pork and the extra spending, which seems to be in every bill that ever gets passed in Congress, should have been taken out, because it really seems like, at least according to what many of us are saying in regards to this bill, business as usual from the Republican Party, passing massively inflated bills that no one can read, filled with pork, filled with extra spending. And I think Elon felt pretty discouraged, because I think he believed that I think he came into the government with a little bit of naivety. I think he believed that the cuts implemented by Doge would be widespread and permanent. I think he envisioned a government that was drastically reduced in size very quickly and run much differently than it had been before. But people like Elon need to keep in mind, well, President Donald Trump is in charge of the Republican Party and the current Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces in the United States, 47th sitting president and head of the executive branch of the U.S. government. There are certain things that he can't really do. Trump has not been able to rein in the entirety of the Republican Party to follow along with the MAGA agenda. There's still quite a few old guard Republicans in Congress that wield a great deal of political influence and power that are going to be in the halls of power. Well, they were there long before President Donald Trump, and they'll probably be there long after, and they know this. They're not going anywhere. Senators like Lindsey Graham, for example, tried and true neocon Republican. He's entrenched in the system like a tick. He's not going anywhere, unfortunately for all of us. Now, I think Elon, again, had very high expectations on what he would be able to accomplish and the things that President Trump would allow him to do. I think he feels betrayed that this bill is being pushed through, that the promises of financial responsibility from the Republican Party are not being kept, which they never are, let's be honest. When you vote Republican in the United States, leading up to the elections, you're going to be promised a lot of things, usually including cutting back on the scale and scope of government, balancing the budget, no more wasteful spending, yada, yada, yada. And then once Republicans get elected, inevitably they don't do any of those things. Now, people were hoping that with the election of Donald Trump, that would change. And despite Trump's rhetoric indicating that the second term would be different than the first, in many ways it's just a continuation of his first term. Now, I'm not completely pessimistic about it, but when it comes to reining in Republicans in Congress and getting them to go along with the MAGA agenda, easier said than done. Trump can't threaten to primary everybody. Many of these people are still able to actively sabotage Donald Trump's political agenda with just one vote. So he is trying to walk a tightrope and keep some of these Republican senators happy. He's trying to, I believe, play the political long game to get the things that are most important to his agenda passed. And there are several important things in this bill. No tax on tips and several other promises that Donald Trump made, or things that he would pass or advocate to be passed in Congress in accordance with the agenda and the platform that he ran on. So I think what happened with Elon was he again, as I mentioned before, he went into this as a naive kid. He really thought with his money, power, and influence, he's going to go in there and they're going to make massive sweeping changes to this system that many people here in the United States say is rotten to the core, which I don't necessarily disagree with that. You can either make very slow incremental changes to a system like that. It might take 20 or 30 years. Eventually you might see the changes that you really desire. It takes a long time to root bad actors out of the system, or it could be burnt to the ground and started over, burnt to the ground very quickly and started over from scratch. Burning the entire system down, though, usually does result in some kind of civil conflict, and I think in the United States we would prefer not to have that happen. Elon, when the biggest mistake that he made is that he tried to pressure President Trump publicly. Now instead of handling this in private, having private discussions with President Trump, and then, when it became apparent that this bill was going to be proposed that he disagreed with, instead of, voicing his concerns privately with Trump and leaving it at that, and saying that, okay, well, I don't agree with spending in this bill, we wanted spending cuts, I headed Doge for you to, bring this vision of yours to fruition in regards to spending cuts and getting rid of wasteful spending and useless programs. Why are we increasing the budget by another few $1 trillion? This isn't what I wanted. Now, instead of having a private conversation with President Trump, and then if his concerns weren't listened to, instead of bowing out gracefully and agreeing to disagree, and if he felt it necessary to walk away from President Trump, he could have done so quietly. Now, instead of doing that, he did the worst possible thing you can do with Donald Trump, is he tried to levy public opinion and public pressure to try to get the Republicans to backtrack on this bill. I think that's why he was so prominently vocal about his frustrations with President Trump, and why he did this in such a public manner. He thought, well, if I could just show the president how many people are against this bill and bring it to people's attention, maybe that will force him to change course. Now, President Trump is not somebody who likes to have his hand forced or be sucked into some kind of public repudiation of his policies in order to levy greater public opinion against him to get him to change his mind. He's not a big fan of that. Now, especially somebody from his inner circle attempting to do that would offend him greatly, and it seems that is exactly what it has done. Now, I won't get into all the mudslinging and read all the tweets, but things got pretty bad. I would say Trump said a few things in typical Trump fashion, a couple low blows and insulting statements, which caused Elon to bring up the Epstein files, saying that Trump's name was in the Epstein files, and the only reason it hasn't been released is because Trump's name is in them. Now, this was immediately refuted by Epstein's own lawyer, who said that Trump is not, in fact, in the Epstein files anywhere. There's no damning evidence against him. And now, I don't know, I've never seen the Epstein files, but this seems like just a vindictive and petty move on Elon Musk's part. Now, if he had access to the Epstein files and knew that Trump was in them, then why did he have such a close relationship with him? Why did he bring his kids around him? Why was he such a public advocate for him up to maybe a week ago, knowing what he knew? That makes him look like he has no morals and he is fake, so to speak. So, no, I don't genuinely believe that he knows that Trump is in the Epstein files. That, to me, is just mudslinging. But making an accusation like that, knowing how politically sensitive that is, and the fact that it seemed to just incentivize the Democratic Party now to go after Trump based upon this long-running idea that Trump was in the Epstein file, or this long-running accusation that Trump was in the Epstein files. It gave them political gasoline, so to speak. Now, if Elon Musk's whole involvement in politics was to stop the American Democratic Party from wrecking the country, why would you purposefully give them ammunition? Why would you, instead of thinking about the political long game and walking away from President Trump, if he had a disagreement with him and keeping everything private and not, having this great public feud that looks like there's cracks in the foundation of the MAGA movement, if he truly cared about the long-term stability of the Republican Party and the long-term goals of the MAGA movement, then why didn't he just keep these things private? Problem is, Elon Musk doesn't really know anything about politics. He's a businessman, and that's it. He's an eccentric billionaire. I don't think he thinks of the political long game, so to speak. He didn't really consider the consequences of burning all his bridges with President Trump. He was just upset and angry in the moment, lashed out, said some very outlandish things, and now he's trying to backpedal. From what I understand, he's deleted all the comments that he made about President Trump. And apparently he called the White House. Now, President Trump ignored his phone call, which I don't blame him. I think had Elon not had been so aggressive and aired this so publicly and then brought up the Epstein thing, I think he probably could have salvaged his relationship a bit with President Trump, because President Trump has had contentious relationships with people in the past and has repaired those relationships and now appears to have an amicable relationship with these people. Marco Rubio, for example, our Secretary of State, was on the receiving end of many insults from President Trump during the run-up to the 2016 election, and now Marco Rubio works for President Trump and tries to implement his vision for his foreign policy as best that he can. But the problem, I think, with Elon is Elon was just recently part of Trump's inner circle. He was probably considered a trusted associate and friend by President Trump. They seem to have a pretty close relationship. No, I'm sure Elon, being Elon and seeing the way that he behaved and interacted, that I can understand why he may annoy some people and people would be frustrated with him. The Signal chat leaks, it looked like J.D. Vance had some issues with Elon and the way Elon behaved and how Elon carried himself and the influence and power that he thought he actually had. There seemed to be some friction with the political class and Elon within Trump's administration, but at the end of the day, Elon was still part of Trump's inner circle. Now Trump sees this as a serious betrayal. Going public like this and being perceived to be out to hurt the president is to somebody like Donald Trump is the gravest of insults. It's not something you do. That is something that would damage anyone's relationship with the president probably far beyond repair. So I don't think Elon can salvage his relationship with President Trump after this. I don't think he'll ever be trusted and brought into Trump's inner circle again. I don't think Trump would ever do him any favors again. I think Elon would be better served by doing what if Elon's vision is a smaller government that runs efficiently, that isn't going to bankrupt the nation, then he can continue to work on these things, but he needs to think of the political long game. Cutting himself off from, the king of the MAGA movement, so to speak, the head, the main force behind the Republican Party, the party that is the only party that he could really attach himself to, because he's talking about forming a third party in America to challenge, I guess, the Republicans and Democrats, which the only thing it would do, again, and this was the problem that RFK Jr. ran into, it's going to siphon votes away from the lesser of two evils, according to whoever is heading that independent party. That's the issue that RFK Jr. had. He realized that if the Democrats won over Trump, that anything that he wanted to do was no longer going to be possible, and he would have no chance to have any kind of influence in the government. So he made a deal with Trump. Now, he doesn't agree with everything that Trump does, but he wanted to keep his foot in the door. So he exited the election, wanted to make sure that no votes were pulled away from Trump, and in return for that, he was allowed to be part of Trump's administration and attempt to implement the healthcare measures that he's wanted to implement for years. Now, Elon could have played this game and realized that not everything that Trump puts forward he's going to agree with. But if he really wants to implement these long-lasting changes, that he needs to keep his foot in the political door, so to speak, and not burn his bridges with the most powerful man in the world. Apparently he has burned that bridge, and I don't think he's going to be able to rebuild that bridge anytime soon. So what he should have done, to sum everything up, is disagreed with Trump in private, not made any public he could have made a short post about this bill saying he didn't necessarily agree with it. He was still loyal to President Trump, still friends with him, but didn't necessarily agree with this bill, but hopefully at least some good will come out of it, but we really need to curtail spending. He could have left it at that and left it alone. And then any further discussions he could have had in private with President Trump and at least maintained his friendship with him and didn't burn that bridge. Now, instead of doing so, him as a 50-some-year-old man threw a public temper tantrum on the internet, which again makes him look unprofessional, unreliable, and not someone you want to have in the White House because he comes off as emotionally volatile. So I think the close relationship with President Trump and Elon Musk is over and done with. I don't see that being repaired anytime soon. I think Elon Musk is still pretty crucial to our space program, so it might be in President Trump's interest to at least allow him to assist with the U.S. space program as much as possible, to still have some presence within, not directly in his administration, but at least don't hamper his activities too much in regards to like technology and space travel and whatnot. It would be in our best interest as a nation to at least give Elon the ability to do the things that he does best, but also, I don't see Trump allowing him into his inner circle again and giving him the access to the American political machine that he had before. I think those days are over. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about that tonight. Sorry this video is getting posted so late. I took my kids fishing today and had quite a few other things to do, but I didn't want to wait till tomorrow to post a video, so I'm doing one pretty late in the day now. But I hope everyone out there has a great day, and see everybody on Wednesday.